Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Brennan with the Notre Dame Alumni Association. Thanks for joining us for the first edition of Catching Up With, a new online learning series offered through My Notre Dame that allows you to tune in and learn a little bit more about some of your fellow Notre Dame alumni. If you're watching this event live, please join in the conversation by submitting questions to us. You can email your questions into us at the email address ndalumni@nd.edu. We're thrilled that our guest today for the first edition of Catching Up With is the only Notre Dame graduate currently serving in the United States Senate, Senator Joe Donnelly. A member of the class of 1977 and the law school class of 1981, Senator Donnelly served for 6 years in the House of Representatives before in 2012 he was elected to the U.S. Senate representing the great state of Indiana. Senator Donnelly, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me with you.
Well, Senator, as we said, this is kind of an opportunity for our alums and friends to get to know you a little bit better. So, first of all, we know you're in your office there in Washington, D.C. How's the?
I'm looking out the window in your office. It looks like a nice day in South Bend.
It's overcast, but it stopped raining finally. So yeah, not bad. Has the sweltering heat taken over in D.C. yet?
It has, but that's okay. I actually get back home to Indiana tomorrow night, so I'll be home all weekend.
Great, good to hear. So why don't we, if we're giving people kind of getting to know you a little bit better, let's start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
Sure, I grew up out on Long Island in New York in a little town there. It's a bigger town now, but the name of it is Massapequa. And I was the fifth of five in our family. My grandparents came over from Ireland and moved to the Lower East Side of New York City. And gradually, as the family got a little bit bigger, we moved further and further out. And when I came along, I was the fifth of five. Like I said, the little house we lived in closer to the city, there was no more room. And so we moved out a little bit further on Long Island.
All right, well, as a fellow Long Island native, the first thing I have to ask you is Yankees or Mets?
Well, I grew up cheering for Mickey Mantle, and my father was a diehard Yankee fan, so I was always partial to the Pinstripes. I was not one who hated one or the other. I always liked the Mets, but I was a Yankees fan.
All right, well, that's something we can agree on. As you started to get older and into high school, what were you like, in high school? Were you very studious? Were you an athlete? What were you like sort of in your early teen years?
I was incredibly boring is what I was. I played baseball and went to school, and that was pretty much it. I tried to be better socially, but was not blessed with those gifts. I spent more time on the baseball fields and just in school.
And when you were in high school, did you always know you wanted to go to Notre Dame? Was that sort of a dream of yours? How did you end up as a student here on campus?
I thought about it, but actually I never expected a chance to go. My brother, who is just 2 years older than I, was the first person in our family ever to go to college. And so I had hoped to go to college, but to go to Notre Dame was almost, unthinkable. It was like this far-off dream that wasn't really possible. But my dad said, hey, you might as well apply. What do you have to lose? Back then, it was $25 to apply. So I guess it's probably a few bucks more these days. But it was $25 to apply, and my dad said, let's send it in and see what happens. And I was fortunate enough to be accepted.
Great, and I think the next question I have to ask you, it seems like anytime a Notre Dame alum meets another alum that they don't know too well, the first question they always inevitably ask is, what dorm did you live in?
Sure, yeah. Well, my dorm is gone. I lived in Holy Cross Hall up on the hill across from there was the lake, and then Holy Cross Hall was a dorm up at the top of the hill. And so back then, and I know alums back then would be familiar with this, but current ones would not be, is that when you were accepted and you applied, you got a brochure that had the dorms listed. And so it wasn't like a computer-generated random thing. You picked, and it was by price. And so if the dorm was air-conditioned, Flanner and Grace were like the Taj Mahal at that time. They were higher priced than the others, and Holy Cross happened to be the lowest priced dorm.
And what was it like then? Holy Cross Hall at the time was a little bit off the beaten path compared to some of the other dorms that were more centrally located. I know a lot of residents of Carroll.
So was I and some of my fellow dorm mates. We were a little too.
Yeah, I know a lot of residents of Carroll Hall, now say they all enjoy living kind of off in their own little space. What was the experience like for you at the time?
Oh, it was great. It was a real community, and actually, our son attended Notre Dame and wound up being at Carroll Hall. And then we found out that a whole group of kids at Carroll Hall, their dads had lived at Holy Cross. So we think that the alumni groups kind of said it, well, if their fathers could survive Holy Cross, we can stick the kids out at Carroll Hall, is what they thought. But Carroll's a great hall. Holy Cross was a wonderful place. It was a really tight-knit community. My roommates, my closest friends in life are the guys I met there. They were in my wedding. I was in their wedding. I see them all the time. One of them sent me an email kidding me about being on this today, and so we talk to each other all the time.
Great. What did you study as a student?
I was a government student, and the department was really good. We had great teachers, great professors who were very, very caring, and so I felt it was a pretty good choice.
Yeah, well, it seems to have worked out pretty well for you.
We're so good.
Looking back, did you at the time, is that something that was in your mind, the idea of maybe down the road running for office, or did you feel like studying government at all pushed you in that direction?
Well, I was very interested in it, but you know, I was actually hoping to get a job at some point was what it was. I wanted to go to law school. I was very interested in the law, and it was just back then, you know, in the late 70s, mid to late 70s, it was something a lot of people were interested in, the government, and I was as well. And so I felt, look, I can broaden my horizons. I can learn a lot more, and so I was very fortunate to get that chance.
And then what made you decide to attend Notre Dame Law School after finishing your undergraduate studies?
You know, I actually went out and worked between law school and undergrad because I had about $4 when I graduated. So I figured, you know, this would be kind of nice to actually have a dollar or two in my pocket. And I remember going out and I made, I think, $12,000 a year, and I thought I'd died and gone to heaven, was the richest person on the face of the earth, you know. But then I decided, you know, I really do want to increase my skills, increase my ability to be productive, and so I had the chance to go to Notre Dame Law School and was fortunate enough to get to go.
And was there, what was sort of what did you envision the career path being when you were in law school and finishing up law school? Did you want to practice law? What was your sort of plan out of the gate there?
Yeah, I wanted to practice law and have a chance to do that, and I liked it. It was really good, and I was fortunate, though, that I had a chance to help some friends who ran for office, and that's kind of how I got into it a little bit, is friends of mine ran for office, and so I'd help them out, contribute a little, you know, a few dollars here and there, and that's kind of how I got involved.
Yeah, so then what really made you go from there to, you know, helping out some friends to starting to think about a political career of your own and running for office yourself?
Sure. Well, back in 1986, I helped a local attorney, Tom Ward, who's a Notre Dame grad. Tom ran for Congress, and they said he has no chance, and I saw in the paper he's a Notre Dame grad, and I said, I got to help my fellow Notre Dame grad, fellow fighting Irish guy. We can't leave him hanging out here. So I helped, and we came very, very close. He wasn't fortunate enough to win, but wound up in a recount, and I wound up, I think because my fees were low, as this recount attorney. And it was very interesting, and it felt like we were making a difference. And later on, some years later, I had a chance to, or I was asked to be on the Mishawaka-Marion Catholic High School school board, so I helped with that. And then some folks locally came and asked me if I would consider running for Congress, and I was very concerned about the situations in Iraq and Afghanistan, and thought maybe I can make a difference.
Obviously, you know, you represented the Indiana 2nd Congressional District, the South Bend District, when you were in Congress. What made you, you know, but from the time you finished law school, you know, you remained active in the community here in South Bend. What made you decide to stay local in South Bend after law school rather than going back to New York or going somewhere else?
Well, sure. You know, it was a really wonderful community. It is, you know, people kid a lot about the weather and this and that, but you'd be hard-pressed to find nicer people anywhere. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more welcoming community. My wife, who I met in college, she's a Notre Dame student too, happened to be from South Bend. And so, you know, we always laugh. She said she'd be willing to move anywhere in the country as long as it was South Bend. So that had some influence on it as well.
Great. The first time you ran for Congress, obviously you came up sort of just short in a very close race. What made you convinced that you should run again and give it another shot?
Well, I still thought we could make a difference, and you know, we certainly didn't run a perfect campaign, but we did come close. In terms of campaign funds, the other side certainly had a lot more of everything, and we still came very close. And so I thought, you know, if we can do a couple things different, maybe the times will be a little bit different, that we have a great chance to win. And so if I have a chance to put in a little bit more effort and as a benefit get to represent my country, that's a pretty good deal.
Sure. What sort of how can you describe to kind of the average person what it feels like? What are the responsibilities that come with being the representative, the voice for so many people in Washington?
First would be humbling, and the chance to serve here. Every day you walk in the Capitol, you still get goosebumps. I was asked by a school group I was with yesterday from Delphi, Indiana. One of the parents came up and said, "Hey, do you still get goosebumps when you walk in?" I said, "Absolutely. It takes your breath away to have a chance to do this and to know, look, if we make some good decisions, we can bring the deficit down. If we make some good decisions, we can have our men and women come home from Afghanistan. All of them are home from Iraq now. Almost all of them are home from Afghanistan. We've been able to strengthen our economy. We've still got a ways to go. But for us in Indiana, when we went through such difficult times in '09, to be able to see our economy come roaring back and people being able to go to work and have jobs, for me, to know that a mom and dad have a good job, have a chance to send their kids to good schools, retire with dignity, and our nation's stronger at the end of the day, that's what we try to work on. It's not real fancy stuff. It's just meat and potatoes trying to make things work.
Sure. At this time, we want to remind anyone who's watching live, if you have a question for the senator that you'd like the senator to answer, email it to us. We'll ask your question on the air. The email address is ndalumni@nd.edu. Senator, obviously in 2012, you successfully ran for the United States Senate, and since January 2013, have been serving as one of Indiana's 2 senators. What is it like? How is it different going from the House of Representatives to the Senate? What has that transition been like for you?
It's a little bit smaller body, obviously, and so what there's a premium on is being able to work together, being able to talk to other members, sit down with them, and try to move things forward. We just were able to include an amendment in the defense bill. I happen to serve in the Armed Services Committee that is designed to try to reduce military suicides. And so what I was able to do is almost go one by one through the different members of our committee and then also through people in the Senate to say, look, this makes sense. It'll make our families stronger. It'll help all of our people who serve in the military to be able to have someone to talk to. And so what it's like is it's almost like networking in other areas, is that you create relationships and friendships, you stand for something, people know where you're coming from, and together you hope to be able to achieve some things.
Obviously, we talked earlier about how you studied government as well as law as a student at Notre Dame. How do you think, kind of looking back, how did your Notre Dame education prepare you for your career in Congress?
Well, the teachers were very challenging. I remember Professor Roos, you know, where they didn't give you answers, they forced you to think through what the answers were. The chance to try and develop your skills, to challenge you, to not just accept what is on the surface, but to go a little bit deeper. And that's what I try to do here every day, is there are you know, canned answers almost everywhere you go, and what we try to do is actually go a little bit deeper, find out what's going on. For instance, I've gone to Afghanistan or Iraq in almost every year that I've been in the House or in the Senate, and the reason why is to actually be there on the ground, talking to people face to face, being able to walk around the outposts, being able to look our soldiers in the eye and see what they think.
Great. Senator, we're going to move on to a few questions from our alumni and friends who've submitted questions for you. The first one here is from Virginia Bishop, and she asks, what is the hardest part of your job as senator, and what's the most fulfilling part of your job?
The hardest part is the travel, you know, going back and forth. I love South Bend. It's not the easiest place to get to. There's no real direct flight. And so we either fly, but I now represent the whole state too. So one weekend I may go to Evansville, another weekend to South Bend, another weekend to Richmond. And so during the wintertime it's a little bit tough, but it's no big problem. It just gets the connections get a little bit shaky sometimes. And the most fulfilling is the chance to see that the families of Indiana, the families of our country, that things can get a little bit better for them. For instance, in 2009, my old congressional district, we had the Chrysler transmission plants there, and it was very clear back then that Chrysler might not make it. And so we went from over 5,000 people working in those plants to less than 100. And we stuck with it, and we kept working and kept working and kept working. And then today, so we were over 5,000, we went down to less than 100. Today we have over 7,000 people working in those plants. We just opened up a new plant last month. And so it's really fulfilling to have someone come up and say, hey, look, we appreciate everything you did to keep our plant open, to have faith in us. You stuck with the American worker. And because of that, I'm able to buy a new house, or I was able to catch back up on the payments that I fell behind. That's a pretty fulfilling thing.
Sure. Our next question comes from Katie Fallon. She asks if you will describe the struggles of being a moderate in Washington, D.C.
Oh, it's not so much struggles. You know what you believe, you stick with what you believe, and you try to get things done. With cable news, it's always the loudest that get the attention, whether it's on the left or on the right. And so there's a lot of noise that goes around, but the actual work that gets done in Washington in the U.S. Senate is pretty much right down the middle. Just last week I was at dinner with a number of Republicans and Democrats. People think these things don't happen, and what we actually do is we get together all the time to try to go over what makes sense. How can we create policy that's good? We're working on student loan issues right now. We're working on other things to try to make it so that families can get a little bit better shake. And so it's not hard at all being a moderate. You just do what you think is right and let the chips fall where they may. And I always laugh. I said, look, I have a Notre Dame degree, so if I get voted out for doing what's right, I can find another job.
Well, Senator, another question we have for you from someone who I think you might be familiar with, judging by the question. It's from Stephen Pesanovsky, I believe, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. The question is, will you be attending the Holy Cross Hall Hog reunion at Notre Dame in September of 2015?
I will, and no one there is allowed to tell how many beers I drink while I'm there either. So.
All right, Senator. Well, we know you're busy. We're going to move into, we have kind of 5 final questions we're going to be asking all of our guests.
And I have to tell you, I still have a Holy Cross Hogs hat on my dresser at home. So
great. Well, you can bring to the reunion.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a set of 5 final questions we're going to be asking to all of our guests who come on. All the questions related to Notre Dame. First one, what's your favorite spot on Notre Dame's campus?
Oh, my favorite spot is the hill where Holy Cross Hall used to be. I love that spot up there. Spent a number of years of my life there. We had the ball field right below. We had our own ball field, our own football field, the whole deal. So it's really special, that and the grotto.
Second, what's the most memorable class you took while at Notre Dame, either as an undergraduate or in your law school years?
Well, they would probably be classes by professors like Professor Roos or Professor Erwin Press in anthropology, who was an amazing professor. And one other, I don't hold me to the name here, and I don't want to be. We had a professor, I think it was Professor Williams, and the hot rumor on campus was that he was a former CIA agent, and the class reflected much of that. So I truly enjoyed that class.
And what's your favorite Notre Dame football memory?
Oh, in my freshman year. By the way, my freshman year we went undefeated in football, and in basketball we were 29-1. So we had a pretty good run my freshman year. But I remember we played Southern Cal, we called it back then, and we beat them at home. It was kind of like the game for number 1. And Eric Pennick ran around end for about 85 yards. Tom Clemens played a great game, and we won 23-14. And Joe Montana was a classmate of mine, so it was great to watch him over the years as well.
And if you could invite 3 other Notre Dame alums to a dinner party, which three would you choose? Who would be on the guest list?
I better start with my wife. So I think she counts as one unless I get a freebie on that one. And then Father Hesburgh, who, to me, if I look around this world and I think about the face of Christ, that's Father Hesburgh to me, who has done so many extraordinary things, who has always cared for those who have not had people to care about them. Father Hesburgh always did that. And then there's a young lady, Danielle Green, who is extraordinarily special. She played basketball for Notre Dame. She came from a very tough upbringing in Chicago and set a goal to come to Notre Dame. And she was able to do that. And then after playing basketball for Notre Dame, at some point thereafter, she enlisted in the United States Army. And she was in Iraq. And while in Iraq, she lost her arm when rocket-propelled grenades were shot at her and her company. And she's recovered from that. She's an extraordinary example for all of us, and so I think that would be a pretty good dinner table.
And the last of our final five here, what will Notre Dame's record be in football in the coming year? We're putting you on the spot.
If I ever want to actually have Coach Kelly not yell at me or something, I better say they're going to be undefeated, right? That makes sense. So that's what we'll go with. We'll hope for that, and I also want to say, so many of our other teams have had extraordinary success. I followed the lacrosse team, the basketball team. They've all had great years. We're proud of all of them. And the kids who are at Notre Dame, what I'm also proud of is the amazing service that the students do, not only for South Bend and all of Indiana and our community, but for this country. They're an extraordinary group of young men and women that are on that campus, and they change our country's face every day.
All right, Senator, we have one final question for you that just came in from another one of our alumni and friends. The question is, it's from Melinda Balker, and the question is, as the only Notre Dame alum in the Senate, are you surprised there aren't more Notre Dame alums who go into politics?
I am surprised that there's not quite as many here as some other schools, but we're trying to develop a bench. I laugh, we call our office the Notre Dame ghetto. For the Capitol, that any kids who are coming back and forth, we always have interns from the Notre Dame Washington program. We always have them in our office. We try to include young people from Notre Dame, and occasionally have little football rallies, that kind of thing. And so I think it's beneficial for our country to have Notre Dame folks here, because Notre Dame has a real common sense approach that Notre Dame grads in general aren't here to be strident. They're here to try to get things done and try to do it with a flavor that reflects the Catholic faith of Notre Dame, where we look out for others, we strengthen our country. I never forget the motto, God, Country, Notre Dame. Think about it every day.
Well, Senator Donnelly, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and joining us today. We really appreciate it.
It's my privilege. Go Irish.
Go Irish. Well, that wraps it up for the first edition of Catching Up With. For future editions and to browse all of our upcoming events in our online learning series, please visit My Notre Dame at my.nd.edu. I'm Kevin Brennan with the Notre Dame Alumni Association. Thanks so much for watching.